Hey guys! Every year, archaeologists make amazing discoveries that rewrite history. Recently, a team uncovered the remains of a settlement near the modern city of Ashkelon in Israel. They date the place back to 3300 BC, and that makes it at least 5,000 years old. They're calling the place Tel Tzaf. Now, this wasn't just any town. It was a huge metropolis for the time period, covering about 26 acres. There were houses, shops, and other structures. Plus, there was a necropolis nearby where people buried their dead. Well, recently, researchers discovered something strange underneath the city. It was a catacomb carved thousands of years before anyone in the region knew how to use metal tools. To get to it, they had to dig down 15 feet. And what they found surprised them. They originally thought this was a tomb, but it wasn't. See, there weren't any bodies inside. Instead, the walls were lined with hundreds of skulls. The room itself looked like a cavern. Its roof was so high they couldn't see its ceiling. But then they noticed some strange markings on the walls. It was a type of relief carving, meaning it would have been done with a tool of some kind. And these carvings showed a man with hollow eyes. He was surrounded by flames and had a look of anguish on his face. Whoever or whatever he was, he seemed trapped inside the catacomb. But that wasn't all. Around the room, there were warning signs carved into the walls. They read, "Do not wake him. Do not meet his gaze." But who was he? Clearly, whoever was trapped in the catacomb wasn't a god. After all, there were multiple depictions of him, so he must have been an important person in their society. Maybe he was some kind of king or chief, or maybe he was something else entirely. The researchers didn't think much more of it and started to excavate the rest of the site. It would be another 2 years before they returned to the catacombs. When they did, they brought along experts in ancient languages. They hoped the experts could translate the strange carvings and maybe shed some light on the mystery of the place. But when they got down there, they found something that made their blood run cold. Since they'd been gone, more bones had been uncovered. The entire floor was littered with human remains. It was clear that people were brought here after they died, but it didn't make sense why. People were buried in all kinds of places during those times. Sometimes they were laid to rest in caves, sometimes they were buried under the floors of buildings, and sometimes they were left out in the open. But never before had they seen anything like this. Then the language expert made a chilling discovery. He realized that the warnings didn't say, "Don't wake him." They said, "Don't wake it." That meant whatever was in the catacomb wasn't a person at all. It was something far worse, something inhuman. This discovery sent shivers down everyone's spine. It seemed like the builders of Tel Tzaf knew exactly what they were dealing with. They understood the danger they were facing. So the team decided to seal off the catacomb and leave it alone. It was clear that whatever was inside was best left undisturbed. But then 3 men came along. They were treasure hunters who heard rumors of a strange place beneath the ancient city, and they wanted to see it for themselves. What they didn't know was that they were about to become part of the catacombs' gruesome history. When they finally reached the chamber, they brought along lanterns to light the way, and as soon as they did, they knew they were in for a nightmare. The sight that greeted them was straight out of a horror movie. Skulls lined the walls, and right in the middle was a statue of a terrifying creature. It looked like a man, but he had no face. His eyes were hollow sockets. This was the Eternal Watcher, and it was guarding a secret that should have stayed buried. The treasure hunters didn't listen to the warnings carved into the walls. Instead, they pressed forward, and as they did, the air grew colder. Suddenly, they heard a noise coming from the darkness beyond the lantern light. It was a low hum, like someone chanting a spell, but there was no one there. At first, they tried to ignore it, but then one of the hunters froze. His eyes were wide with terror, and he was staring directly at the Eternal Watcher. His friends shook him, but he didn't respond. His eyes had turned pure black. They were empty sockets, just like the ones in the statue's head. Then the chanting started up again, and this time it was louder. The hunter fell to the ground and never moved again. His friends panicked and ran away, but they didn't get far. Soon, one of them froze, and then the other. They stared into the darkness, and then their eyes turned black. They joined the others on the ground, and the chanting grew even louder. But the treasure hunters weren't the only ones affected. The researchers who had been excavating the site felt it too. They were at the surface, but they could hear the chanting. It was coming from the catacomb. They knew they had to do something, but they didn't know what. As they stood there listening to the chanting, one of them suddenly collapsed. His eyes were wide with terror, and he was staring straight up at the sky. Then the researchers did something very foolish. They ignored the danger and went down into the catacomb. They hoped to rescue the remaining treasure hunter, but they were in for a massive disappointment. What they found would haunt them for the rest of their lives. First, they noticed that the chanting had stopped. It was eerily silent, and that was even scarier than the chanting. Then they saw the remaining treasure hunter. He was kneeling next to the Eternal Watcher, and his eyes were fixed on its face. They were completely black, soulless. The researchers shook him, but he didn't respond. He didn't seem to hear them at all. They dragged him away, but he wouldn't move. He was like a zombie, and it was clear that whatever was in the catacomb had taken control of him. As they stumbled out of the catacomb, they noticed something strange. All around them, the skulls on the wall had turned to face them. It was as if they were mocking them, taunting them. They could feel the eyes of the dead upon them, and they knew they had to get away from there. They raced to the surface, but they could hear the treasure hunter behind them. He was moving now, and he was making a terrible noise. It sounded like a mix between a scream and a growl. The researchers ran as fast as they could, but the sound grew louder and louder until it echoed through the ancient city. When they finally got away, they never looked back, and that's when the nightmares began. They couldn't sleep at night, and whenever they closed their eyes, they saw the skulls turning toward them. They heard the treasure hunters' screams echoing in their ears. They tried to tell their story, but no one believed them. So they kept it a secret, knowing that no one would understand. It would be centuries before archaeologists rediscovered the catacomb. But when they did, they found something that made their blood run cold. All the treasure hunters were gone, but among the skulls there were new faces. They stared blankly ahead, and their mouths were open in silent screams. It was as if the catacomb had claimed them and added them to its collection. And the Eternal Watcher was still there, guarding its domain and waiting for its next victims. Now, some people might say that this is just a creepy story that has no basis in reality. But there are others who believe it's true. After all, we've only explored a tiny fraction of the world, and there are many things we don't understand. There are places that are so strange and mysterious that they defy explanation. Perhaps there really is a catacomb somewhere in the Middle East that's home to an ancient evil. Maybe there are warning signs carved into its walls, telling us not to disturb what lies within. Or maybe it's just a story. It doesn't matter because we can't know for sure. If you want to learn more about archaeology, stay tuned for more updates. Thanks for watching.